All right. Welcome to the Dylan Experience Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Sessler, and my co-host is Kyle Zahn.
How you guys doing?
We are here to help change the way the world looks at mental health, self-development, overcome adversity. Thanks for joining us. This is episode is it eight?
Eight.
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 And we have an incredible guest lineup for you. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always see her. But my next guest spent most of her life overweight, unhappy, depressed, broken, completely lost. She used to see her biggest roadblock as weighing 311 pounds. She struggled with her identity, her purpose in life. Her biggest limiting belief was, I will do this when I lose weight. Sound familiar to anybody? I'm sure anyone can relate to that. Her weight was simply the facade for her perceived struggles. Her journey brought her to the idea of allowance, and I want to talk about that. My guest has since become a successful life coach that specializes in spiritual fitness, wellness, mindfulness, self awareness, wholesomeness, oneness with yourself, allowances. And she has created an absolutely beautiful space, carefully designed to awaken the beauty. And I think this is my favorite part about this whole thing, the beast from within. Um, whether you are seeking to change your body, eating habits, mindset, career, healing from past traumas, or rekindle your connection with your inner child, it all starts in the same place, the mind. And my next guest will help you shift your perspective in a direction that can actually create change within you. And one of her favorite quotes, we've talked about this before, the weight of the weight of your mind is heavier than the weight of your body. And I love that. My guest today is Henna Khan. Henna, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. That was beautifully said. So thank you. How's everyone else?
Lovely. Just living the dream here.
Yeah, it's been a great day. It's been a great life so far. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited to be asked to be a part of this. So thank you for even asking. So yeah.
Absolutely. And this isn't the first time. Not everybody knows you from back then because I've grown a bit since the last time we talked. But
Yes.
me and Hannah go way back to last year. I mean, probably around September, we had an Instagram TV where um, we just talked about everything. We just went everywhere with that.
Mhm.
But some people might not know who you are on this
Mhm.
podcast. So please do me a favor, give me and them a little bit about yourself. Tell them, who are you? Who is Henna?
It's a good question you're asking. I think it's something that I'm still always discovering and figuring out who the heck I am. The best part of that is how I've learned to allow myself to constantly change it or add to it, basically, because every day is not going to be the same. Every experience is not going to be the same. And I'm constantly downloading information all around me. And according to whatever I'm connected to, that's the information I'm going to upload in that given moment. And I'm okay with changing it as well. So you pretty much said most of who I am when you were doing the intro, but yeah, I'm a life coach. I specialize in working with individuals who come to me for one purpose, right? They'll see my TikTok, they'll see my Instagram, they'll go to my website, they'll see my transformation. I've lost 130 pounds. It's a lot of weight. So a lot of people will be extremely connected to that. They'll hit me up, they'll message me, they'll fill out my forms. And the first question the first question I will ask them is, why are you here? And they will tell me, I want to lose weight. I want to do what you do. And probably 99% of the time, that is exactly why they're there. What ends up happening is completely on the other side. My goal is to be able to teach people to love themselves, to accept themselves, and to become aware, right? So, being whole, being one with yourself, those are things that are so, so important. It's what I did for me in order to achieve the things that I want to achieve. Just like you said in the intro, I will do this or that when I lose weight. And that was an extremely, extremely negative limitation that I lived most of my life in. And so I just want to teach people how to live life, and how to love themselves. First of all, loving and accepting yourself is super important. Um, let's see, I went to school and I graduated in exercise and wellness. I have a degree in exercise physiology as well. So I love the fitness world. I love the nutritional world. but I also am extremely passionate in just listening and being and understanding and guiding. I cannot tell people to, live their life in a certain way. I don't have that right to. But what I can do is create a space for people to just be heard and for people to create their own knowledge, their own reasons why they are the way they are, or how they want to redesign it, right? I really believe that, growing up or when we're first born and we're around our parents or family or an environment, we're given these pre-designed templates. This is how you should live life. And the reason why you should do it this way is because I did it this way. And here are my experiences. So I already know that. So I don't want you to have to suffer through it or have to figure it out on your own. You should just do it this way. So we live our life in this constant, pre-existing template that's just constantly telling us, do this, do that, do this, do that. And then all of a sudden an adult and we're like, wait, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. What's my passion? What's my purpose? What's the point? And so my goal is to be able to show people that you can, break down all of those walls that are around you in that little square template that has been given to you and unbecome everything, unlearn everything as much as you can, and then create that room and space to choose whatever the heck you want to. So
Kyle, do you see why
Yeah,
why she's
absolutely.
here? Right?
Yep,
Like
this is exciting.
like like this is like Henna, like obviously we've talked before, but this is Kyle's first experience.
Hmm.
And I think, this is the best part about having Kyle here is that he knows me. He knows me really well. Like we spent quite a long time together, like one-on-one, over the past 9, 10, 11 months or so.
Pretty damn
Um,
close. Yep.
and now he sees you, and I want Kyle to speak on this. What do you see, Kyle, between the two of us that is remarkably similar?
Oh, man. Just the overall idea of how you operate. It's insane how you
mm,
both are so enthusiastic and passionate about just life in general.
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
Hannah, you know me, right? Like it's
Thank you.
it's pretty apparent how our beliefs and our values about helping people just co-align
Yep.
so well. Like the ability for like there's no doubt in my mind how well you probably connect with people, and it's because one, you actually understand the idea of space, and you actually understand the idea of what you can actually do versus what you can't do, right? You
Hmm.
can't tell people what to do. You can't tell people how to do it. You can show them your version of it. You can show them that it's a possibility for them, but you can't do it for them. You can't,
Hmm.
you can't tell them to do it because then they don't understand the the impetus to actually do something for themselves.
Mhm.
And again,
Exactly.
that's why you're here, and that's why like I love having you here. There's just so much for us to talk about, and I love that Kyle's
Yes.
here because he can see, you know, the
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 dynamic.
the dynamic between, how we both think. And Kyle, honestly, I would like to hear by the end of this podcast if you think we disagree on anything.
Okay, that'd be
That
Ooh,
interesting.
yes.
that would be an interesting thought.
Hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, one thing is that disagreeing about anything is totally fine, right? Because
It's
Right.
we're
awesome,
all so individualized.
right?
And I love disagreeing with people just because I get to ask questions and I'll understand how this person is going to process. Now, I don't have to make that my belief system. I know I can appreciate the way others see things or process things. And guess what? I'm going to learn a crap ton of information when I disagree with someone
Right.
because I don't know everything.
I love disagreeing with people that love having discussions. That's
Yes,
just a
yes,
personal thing for
yes.
me, right?
That, yeah, I would second that for sure.
And it all comes down to like the cookie cutter idea of like knowledge coming up as a kid sometimes, where everybody is taught the same way, but maybe that's not exactly how you tick or operate, you know?
Mhm,
And then we have people like us that are out there like, you can change your story, you can change your narrative here. Let's help you find who you really are.
Facts.
Oh,
Facts.
facts. Mic drop right there. Perfect. I do want to say congratulations on all of your success, Dylan. I don't know you, Kyle, as much, so I would love to learn more about,
Sure.
who you are and where you've started from for sure. But Dylan, so here's what happened. So months ago, probably earlier this year or end of last year. So I know we spoke probably in September. Great conversation. I think I've rewatched that interview like a billion times just because it reminds me of who I am sometimes, because I forget, we all struggle, we all go through things in life, and then we start getting stuck in these old ways of thinking or behaviors, right?
Right.
And so I always watch that, and I love hearing you speak, Dylan. Like it's just one of those things where, again, maybe because we are very similar in certain ways, or we think very similarly, that hearing you speak is just like, oh yes, that's like right there, connection, right?
Right.
So I love listening to that little recording. I think it was like for 45 minutes, and we totally ended it at a place where it shouldn't have ended, right? Because we were just like, we could have probably talked for hours. But I remember you said something so significant, and it rocked my world as far as like who you are as a person. But you said, you live these two lives, where one working for the government and serving the country, which thank you for that sacrifice. But you do that, and you're tasked to protect us, and by protecting, our states, right? You may have to take a life, right? That's the responsibility that's given to you, that I know you have not taken lightly, and it's something that we talked about during that talk. But then the other aspect of who you are is giving life, right? And I just remember thinking like, oh my God, like I cannot imagine the not burden, but the maybe the pain or the heaviness of having those two roles in life, which again makes you so successful today, because you're able to be aware of that, and you're able to connect with any person on this planet because of your understanding of life. And and there's a lot of other reasons why you're so amazing. But I remember, so I was scrolling on TikTok, right? And this was a couple of months ago, and your video popped up, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Dylan. Like, okay, let me see what you're talking about. And I was just like, oh, it's a great one. And I noticed like where your little face is, there was a plus sign. And I was like, I'm not following Dylan on TikTok. What the heck? Like, when did I unfollow him? Like, that's terrible. So I go into it and I follow it, and I'm like, hold on, he has like a gajillion followers, a gajillion likes. And I was so confused. So I go back into my followers, and it looks like you had a new profile that you made. And I must have just not noticed that you made a new profile. And I remember just goosebumps. I was just like, look at this fool. Like, I knew it. Like, he is meant for so many things, so many great things already at that time, and then in the future. So I can only imagine the shift that you have created for other people. And I want to thank you, because I cannot tell you how many times I come across your videos on my For You page randomly, and you're just saying something that I need to hear for my own personal growth. And I'm just like, dang it. Like, I need to message this guy and tell him like, oh, thank you for this. Like, I want to hire you as a coach sometimes, like it's phenomenal. So thank you for that. But I had to mention that.
Well, I didn't know you were coming on to be my hype man, Henna. Like, geez.
Do you need a tissue,
always,
man?
Always.
I mean, it's for me, it's always been hard to really take all of that, right? Like it for most of my life, and I'm sure, Henna, you can attest to this kind of feeling, and Kyle, you absolutely as well. Being that person in the spotlight is very difficult, right? Like, I mean, it's so remarkably difficult. Being that person that steps out of their comfort zone and expresses themselves and shows. I mean, I show some very like deeply emotional stuff, and it's certainly not easy. And I'm an introvert. Like, I don't know if my followers, right? I know the close followers, know that, but I'm an introvert. I love being alone. If I can go out into a woods and just spend my life there, I'd probably do it. If it was in my cards, I'd probably do it. But I also see the value of connecting to others, and I always, I realized the potential that I had. I don't know when that was. I think it was a young age, but I just didn't recognize it. I didn't feel like it was real. But I always recognized that I could connect with people, whether that was because of trauma or because of all the things that I've been through. I don't think it really matters. What matters is that I knew it, right? At some point, I knew it, I recognized it. And so much as I'm an introvert, I recognized how valuable my insight was for people because of the things that we already talked about, the fact that it's space, right? I focus on space. I focus on creating that, that interaction, and I focus on respect. I focus on honor. I focus on, empathy, and these values that people really don't understand these days. And all of that was very different in January of 2020, when I started being like, you know what, I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to get on TikTok, and I'm going to get on Instagram, I'm going to get on YouTube, I'm going to get on Facebook, and I'm going to start expressing myself, because that's what I know is the thing that people need the most. And lo and behold, here I am talking to two incredible people, and obviously my followers as well, with almost, like, I mean, it's almost a 500,000 people following me, watching me, paying attention to me, millions of likes. And it's just like, had I, had someone told me 3, 4, 5 years ago, after I went through my struggles, and said, "Hey, Dylan, you're going to be an influencer," I'd be like, "The fuck I am," like, like, no. Like, I mean, it just wouldn't have registered in my mind that I was going to do what I'm doing now. And it's a testament to the ability for people to change. I think I'm that. I always want to lead by example, and I think I am a testament to the fact that just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't help people. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't, step out onto a platform, or step out onto a stage and show people what it means to be human. Just because you lost your father to suicide doesn't mean you can't overcome it all, and find happiness and find joy, because I found that. Just because you went through trauma doesn't mean you can't step out into a world that you can enjoy and you can love. And just because you've hated yourself for 25 years doesn't mean you can't change that, and find self-love, and find self-empathy, and create a self-image that's worthy of the person that you've always been. um, I have always focused on showing people how, with myself, and letting me be the canvas first, and then walking the walk and talking the talk. That's me. And it's it's been remarkably hard to take, one, I mean, it's been hard to take criticism, but at the same time, I think
Mm,
it's even harder to take compliments sometimes, because
mm,
I don't want them, nor do I need them. I'm so emotionally validated within myself, because of everything that I've been through, that, like, I don't really need the compliments, nor do I need the criticism, because I'm my number one critic, but I'm also my number one, you know, supporter. I'm my number one cheerleader, and I'm able to say, is that the right thing? Is that the thing you want to say? And also say, you're damn right it is. That's what I need to say. On the same hand. And sometimes I get it wrong, absolutely, but
yeah.
clearly I'm doing things right, and people are recognize it, and I value everything that you said, Henna. I truly do. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so one thing you said, I need to do that. It's you don't need to do anything, right? That you don't believe in or you're connected with. Need is just a terrible word that we use a lot, but you simply allow yourself to just be you and be vulnerable. The reason why you're connecting with so many people is because of how willing you are to show your vulnerabilities and talk about this hard stuff. Now, by doing that, you are opening yourself up to potentially struggling or getting the criticism, or then having to kind of go back and forth and figure out what is for you and what's not for you.
Right.
But I'm right there with you. I've struggled with a lot of this. I've struggled with even knowing, like, who I am as far as a life coach. Someone asked me recently, so, okay, you're a life coach, but like, what do you do? Do you just work with people who need to lose weight?
Right.
And I mean, a lot of them, yeah, they do, but I didn't know how to properly answer them at all.
Right.
And so I've been thinking about it, and I realized that I was overworked, overdrived. I was putting so much pressure because now I started comparing myself to other influencers, and I need to do this. I should be doing this. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. Not realizing that deep down, subconsciously, like really deep down, I was still having that same narrative, even though on the surface and what has been on the higher level of my subconscious, I've been able to knock those thoughts out for other aspects. But now that I am like an influencer, which I always feel very weird saying, because again, I am like just the dorky kid, next door neighbor type of person, and I'm all over the place, and I love it, and I'm loud, and I'm obnoxious, and I'm always laughing. So for me to say that I'm like an influencer who is very just, has everything figured out, I don't, so I had to like work on even writing like, a little blurb about who I am for you guys to kind of read through. Like, that was hard for me. I had to rewrite that thing a couple of times because I didn't know, how do I shorten this, because it's not just one thing, but it's not all things, but in reality it's just me. So definitely understand that.
You said allowances, and I kind of like, that was a question that I wanted to get into because it's not something that I've really focused on, especially in my content. I talk about allowing yourself to be who you are, but you've made it even deeper, right? Like you've got more knowledge on this than I really, have, that I really focus on. So I want to talk to you about allowances because you brought it up, and it's reminding me. So tell me, because, and let me kind of frame this for myself. Um, Becoming who I am now required me to allow myself to be who I am now. And that's extremely difficult. You obviously have felt the same way and are feeling the same way. Um, Tell me what you see every single day with allowances. Tell me, first give people an understanding what really is allowance. What does allowances mean? And what do you see in your own practice, in your own life, in your, in your history? What do you see as allowances? And what are the things that really define creating good allowances?
So couple of questions there, but all about allowance. So you might have to repeat some of the questions to direct me.
That's
But
okay.
for allowance, what that means to me, let me think about this. So I struggled with feeling accepted. I struggled with being a normal person, right? Being like everyone else growing up. I lost my dad also when I was very young. He passed away from a heart attack when I was almost 9 years old, and I think that after that whole event, I really lost myself. I didn't know who I was other than the service of others. Right? I had to step up because I'm the oldest daughter in my family, so I had to play the mom role. Right, while my mom worked as the dad's role. Right, by going back to school and then getting a career and then supporting us.
Yep.
So my life really took a turn in the direction of just serving and taking care of. And what do my siblings need? What do I have to do for the house? What does my mom need? Being my mom's, right hand and her good daughter and being responsible. And that's who I was for a very long time, right? And as a kid, you don't really realize what it is that you're doing or why you're doing. You just know that this is the requirements to be a good daughter or to be a good person at that time. And this is what you do. You listen to your parents, you listen to what you're supposed to do and take care of everyone. So I think that when I became an adult or a teenager, I remember in high school, everybody's filling out these applications for college, and they're like, I want to do this and I want to do this. And I was like, I don't know what I want to do. Like, what would I be good at? What should I go to school for? You know, am I even good at school? And I wasn't good at school. I struggled with education for a very long time. But because that was my narrative, right? I was diagnosed with a slight dyslexia as a kid. So my whole life, I was always told, you know, it's okay, you know, you don't know how to spell this word or say this word because of the dyslexia, or, you know, it's okay, your family's been through a lot, so you don't have to do this because it's okay. You're getting this pass, right? So then I ingrained this narrative inside of me of that, oh, it's okay for me not to know, or to have that drive, or, you know, to figure it out for yourself, basically. Because I was now reliant on either people saying, you're okay, you're good, I accept you, or then service of my family, basically. So when I was going back and forth and trying to figure out who I was, I again went through a lot of ups and downs, a lot of just really deep, dark thoughts, and realizing that my only goal in life at that time was to make everyone happy around me. So I valued who I was in accordance to what other people were telling me, or showing me that this is my role in your life. So if you told me, Henna, I need you, I would obviously drop everything that I was doing. Not that I was really doing anything, but I would drop it and I'd be there. To me, allowance is accepting who you are in its entirety. And when you say that, you know, if someone who's never done this before, you're going to be very, very confused and be like, you know, I don't know who I am, or okay, fine, I'll allow myself, but what does that even look like? So that's when I started learning about perception and learning about what how I see myself in most of my life was all according to what I was assuming other people thought of me, right? So there's this famous quote by Charles Cooley. And it's something that I will repeat to myself every day. I tell all my clients, I tell my friends, whoever is talking to me about this particular topic, I will bring it up because it's so phenomenal. And to me, I've kind of connected it to the word allowance, but I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Did you guys catch that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was living my life according to this false perception, this false reality. And so to feel confident in doing something, or changing my mind, or asking, hey, I need your help, or hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or hey, I didn't really like that you said that. I didn't know how to do that because I was in constant service of everyone around me.
Right.
Because if someone didn't need me, oh my God, like then I'm nothing. I'm worthless, right? And I don't want to feel worthless. But in actuality, when I wasn't serving anyone and I was alone in my room doing my own thing, I felt completely worthless.
Yeah.
So when I started to discover that it is okay for me to be raw, it's okay for me to be aware, it is okay for me to just be, to unlearn, to unbecome, to put myself in uncomfortable situations and teach myself to become comfortable with it. And it may take me years to get comfortable with something, and it doesn't matter because I allow myself to. I allow myself to make mistakes. I allow myself to have trial and error, and I allow other people to change my mind because I'm always evolving and growing. So I think that answers your question. But if there's another question you want to kind of ask me to steer me in the right direction,
No,
go for it.
I love all of that. I mean, that's such a it's such a profound transition when when you start developing that within yourself. I can't even I can't even remember when that process really began for me, because from 6 years old on, it was just a constant state of chaos for me. It was a constant state of transformation, and it was obviously at 6 years old for me, just like you at 9. That transformation was the grief cycle. It was trying to understand and come to terms with something that I couldn't understand, right? And part of my entire transition and my transformation was come to terms with the fact that I could never know why my father committed suicide. I couldn't, right? There was no note, there was no understanding, there was no way, and this is something that I really talk about in my book, is that there's a cognitive space within everybody that we will never know, right? Henna, you're thinking something right now that you will never say to me. Kyle's doing the same thing. There's a space in there that is so secure. It's Fort Knox in every single person. And what that means is that we literally cannot know people. We cannot know everything that must be known to understand a human being. And we try so hard to justify this idea that we know people. I don't know my mom. I don't know my wife. I don't know my son. I don't know these people like I think I want to know them. I know what they tell me. I know what they show me. I know what they provide me for information. I don't know a thing about what they're thinking about unless they're willing to tell me. And that's an allowance for me. That was a deep allowance that I had to make within myself to say, Dylan, you don't know people, right? And here's your proof, right? You literally looked at your dad and you said, don't leave, because you knew he wasn't coming back, right? That was my allowance. That was my final acceptance of what my dad chose, was this allowance to understand, as much as you think you knew about him, he didn't know anything. That you don't understand, and you can't understand why a man would make that choice in front of his son, in front of his daughter, in front of his wife, and walk away in that way, right? Regardless of where you've been, right? Like it had to be an allowance for me to understand, and it brought me here, right? The most beautiful thing that I've created within my life is this perspective to know that my hardest moment, my literal hardest moment in my life, is the reason that I am sitting in front of you doing this podcast, that I'm sitting in front of 400 and I think 19,000 people on TikTok and making videos and making content. It's the reason I'm here. And it's such a hard thing. I literally made a post about it today on Instagram. It is the hardest thing you will ever do, but when you step into a self-healing journey, a self-awareness journey, whatever you want to call it, this moment, it's going to be the hardest thing you ever do. And I'm sure you can attest to this, Henna. I know you can attest to this, Kyle. It is the hardest thing you will ever do in your life, bar none. I don't think there's anything harder. But when you realize, when you get to that moment, right, I think there's this moment, and I feel like I do it every day sometimes, is that there's this moment of recognition of why you went through all of it. When you get to the end of it, it's like, I'm gonna be coming out with a video about healing, and what does healing look like when you cut your arm and there's a scar there. If it's a small scar, it's gonna go away. You've healed, right? What healing really looks like is the ability to look at that scar and say, I'm okay now, right?
Ooh.
And when you look at the scars that are inside, it's the ability to look at those scars and say, they taught me something. They brought me here, and I'm okay now.
Mic drop.
Right?
Mic drop. Yes, exactly. No, I mean that's literally, so allowance to me is exactly that.
Yeah.
Is accepting the fact that you had to go through these struggles or these experiences, because every single experience, every moment, everything is so valuable because there's lessons in everything. And we're not meant to win all the time. Life is not supposed to be easy. And I'm sure you guys both will attest to this, that you weren't supposed to know all these things in the beginning. You're supposed to go through this pain or this struggle because it's brought you, exactly what you said, Dylan, it's brought you right here. And so allowance to me is accepting the fact that you first recognize that there's a cut, right? And then you recognize that it's bleeding. And then you recognize that the cells are eventually going to come together and it's going to heal the wound. And then there's going to be a scar, but then, you could use a cream or you could use something else to, reduce it. So it's the acceptance of all the steps in life.
Right.
Because if you cut yourself and you just sprinkle some magic pixie dust on it and it just suddenly just goes away, life is going to become so boring and mundane that we're going to have no point in anything, right?
Mhm.
So I don't want to win all the time. I don't want to know everything in every single moment. I am not meant to. I allow myself to feel accepted in those moments, because when I do win or when I do achieve something or something happens because of the synchronicities or the connections, because I show gratitude, because I show allowance to myself or to the person that I'm dealing dealing with, that's when it's magical. I mean, it is just this feeling that I don't think I'll ever get used to. But it's also kind of like living in, so I call this Henna's dumb moment, right? I'll tell my clients this, I'll tell people this, but it's meant for me. It's my dumb moment. When things start to connect or work out, it's like, well, duh, because I know it's going to work out, because I live in this feeling of, I know it's going to happen for me. Allow myself the time, I allow myself the healing, I allow myself to recognize all the different steps that it takes for a wound to heal. And sometimes it'll heal and be split right open because of whatever happens, whether it's in your control or not. I allow myself to go through it over and over and again. I allow myself to fail a bajillion, gajillion times until I have that moment of just, ah, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, here's
Can you guys hear me? Sorry. I think yeah. Okay.
It's cutting out a little bit, but I don't think it's too bad. The audio is certainly
Okay.
making it through. Here's my question for you.
Okay.
What do you tell people, or what do you work with people on when they have never won?
So, a really good question. Okay. A lot of people think that they haven't won at things. My job is to show them first what they've already won at. It's the perception. Whatever reality they think they have, or whatever they believe in their core in that moment of why this is happening, or why they feel the way they feel, or why they're overweight. My first thing is to first go back in time and look at other moments in life, because every single person on this planet, there's just no way you haven't won at something. And I'll give you a basic example. When you wake up after your first alarm or second alarm and you make it to work on time, guess what? You just won at something. When you brush your teeth, when you take a shower, when you eat something, whether it's unhealthy or healthy, or you see a random person walking and they drop something and you're like, oh, here you go. Like, it could be as simple and mundane as that, but guess what? You're winning. So my job is to first show you that you already have everything you've ever wanted, right? Now it's about becoming aware of it. Can you sit in your car and drive and be aware of, okay, now your foot's on the gas. Now you have your right blinker on. Now you're looking in the rear view mirror. Are you grateful for that? Are you grateful that you have the vision to do that? The muscles in your legs are able to stop on the brake or go on the gas, or that you have a car to go into, or, there's always something. Once you help someone realize that they've already been winning, they just haven't been aware of it, that's when you start to create more space to work on other things. So my true transformation is not the weight loss, right?
Yeah.
I haven't done all of this to look a certain way or feel a certain way, and obviously it's my health that has improved so much. That's probably the most important thing, but that's not my transformation. My true transformation through all of this that I'm still transforming in is my reaction time, my awareness, my ability to see something and be like, okay, Henna, here are the two options. Here's this. What do we got to do? What do I have to learn? What do I have to unlearn? It doesn't matter. I'm able to react to a certain situation differently. I may go through another bout of feeling a certain way. I may be upset. I may be overthinking about something, and I'll struggle with it. But deep down, I know that I will have that duh moment, right? Henna's duh moment, or it's going to work out, because I refuse to believe. I don't, not even refuse. I don't think I have the ability to believe that things are not going to work out. I just don't.
Yeah. And I think it comes down to values, like and this is a pretty deep conversation that I've been formulating, right? Is this idea of values. Everybody looks at values and it's like, what are your core values? And you look at them and you're like, I'm empathetic. I've got integrity and learning. Those are my 3 core values. Right. And I think we get lost in this idea that we're supposed to take those core values and just apply them. And it's like a shotgun pattern. It's like, okay, I've got to apply my integrity to everything, and I've got to apply my empathy to everything, and my learning to everything. Okay, but what does that really mean to me, right? Like, how do I do that? And here's where I think people make the mistake, because and this is what I think slows people down, right? Like, because at this point in my life, I'm fast, right? I'm so fast, right, Kyle? I mean, like, I make decisions like, I mean, it's not even a thought sometimes. Like, it's just fast. There's certain things that slow me down because I don't know anything about it. I don't have the context. I don't have the background in it. So I have to learn. But when it comes to core fundamental decisions, it's so fast, right? And my expectations are so low. I mean, it's simple for me. But that, I think, comes down to values. And my understanding of values and where people make those mistakes is how they apply those values. When you take your value and you use it as your lens, right? One, some people don't have any values, and that's the problem. But
Mhm.
some people have the values and they're very tied to them, like loyalty or empathy. And they look through this lens and they're only looking at other people, right? They take empathy, right? Empaths are a great example of this. And they'll look at everyone else from the value of empathy and say, I have to make decisions for other people based on this value of empathy. But what they don't realize is that they're actually negating their ability to care for themselves, right? Because they're only looking at it from one direction. They're not looking at this filter with, with themselves in mind. And the the core value system should really be focused on looking at yourself first, and then creating a picture of how everyone else functions within that picture, of how you function within the picture of the value. And if you're not first, if you're not the priority, you lose and you slow down, because you have to start. You're looking at other people and you're like, I want to do this for you, but I don't feel good. I want to do this for you, but I'm hurting. I'm struggling. And it slows you down because you're so focused on everyone else that the only thing that's stopping you is the feelings. It means your body's trying to tell you something, and your mind is like, but we have to do values. We have to do values. We have to do values. And you overpower your body. And these decisions are made within your body to say, hey, I'm in pain. I'm trying to talk to you. I'm trying to speak to you. I'm trying to express myself to you, and you're not fucking listening. And I see it so much, is that, like, I mean, again, like with empathy, right? Empathy can be a huge problem, right? Like, we can, in so many different ways, right? I'm reading a book called Against Empathy, right? Like, I'm learning something that counteracts my own value. And if you don't do that, you get comfortable, right? You get comfortable in this concept of, my version of empathy or my version of this core value is perfect. But yet your body is telling you every single day, I'm hurting, and you're doing nothing about it, but trying to push into the thing that's actually hurting me. When are you going to focus on me? When are you going to take care of me? How are you going to take care of me? And I mean, that's where I'm kind of focusing right now, on helping people, and kind of developing new perspective, is that if your value system is not focused on you first, right? It may feel selfish, but guess what? The people that are selfish don't usually come to me, right? It's the people that are selfless that find me, that are
Yeah.
so focused on helping everybody else that they're hurting. And
Mm.
like, selfish people don't usually find me. It's just, I don't know, maybe someday I will find them, but for right now, selfless people find me. And what they fail at is developing how they look at their values through themselves first. Like, you
Hmm.
need to make yourself a filter, and then look
Mhm.
at the world through your filter. And people fail at that,
Mhm.
and I think it slows them down. It really negates their ability to make quick decisions. Does that make sense?
So let me ask you this, which I mean, beautifully said, and I agree to everything that you literally just talked about. But let me ask you this: when people realize that they're failing at something, what do you think goes on in their heads that cause them to not try again? Or why do people fear failure in your mind?
Connection. I think it's
Mm.
connection, right? Like, and why do you fear anything, really? Like why do you fear, you know, getting up and getting on stage? Why do you fear sharks? Why do you fear spiders, right? Like it's loss of connection, or yeah, I think it's really loss of connection, because
Connection to what?
people people like we are such social beings, right? Like we fear sharks, and we fear tigers, and we fear all of those things because we can die. And
Mhm.
then we don't have connection to people. We fear getting up on stage for fear of losing the respect and the dignity of what everybody thinks about us. And and I think it's so fundamental that the interactions that we have every single day, that the focus on interactions is not respect, it's not honor, it's not dignity, it's not the ability to look at each other and say, I disagree, and I want to be tactful about it, I want to be professional about it. Rather, our society and our lives have been dominated by you know the aggression and the lack of connection, the lack of empathy, the lack of care and trust in how we interact with each other. It's very easy for people to fear nowadays, because if you do it wrong, if you do whatever it is that you're afraid to do wrong, you will be blasted on social media. You'll be blasted in whatever video that shows up, or you'll be, imagine being a politician right now. Like, as much as I don't like politicians and politics, I would hate to be a politician right now. I feel bad for them, because
Mhm.
anything that you do, right? And this is anyone, but let's be real, politicians are going to take the heat the most. Anything that you do, people will hate you for. It doesn't matter. Like, you can support, right? Like right now, I think you can support the verdict of is it the Chauvin trial? Is that how you say his name? The one in
Yeah.
Minnesota right now, right?
Yeah.
Like the George Floyd one. You
Yep.
could support the verdict of George Floyd, people will hate you. You can deny the verdict and not support the trial, and guess what? People will hate you. There's a no-win situation, and it's the loss of connection for me that is why people fear the things that they fear and won't try again, because they've been taught, right? And this can start at young ages, right? I
Mhm.
think this is why PTSD is such a hard thing to work through, is that when you are taught at a young age not to try again, not to fear the very interaction of, like, telling your dad or telling your mom, like, you don't feel happy, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel safe. Well, guess what? If you fear that interaction, do you think you're ever going to work through this self-healing process? Or, I mean, it's going to take you so much, like, so much, inspiration to get to that point of saying, I'm not afraid anymore to try this, or I am afraid and I want to try this anyway, right? Like, it's the
Well, we live in a habits, right? We live in our past habits of what we
yeah.
are used to feeling. So if we're used to recognizing that we're failing at things, then we're always going to live in scarcity. We're always going to think that no matter what we do, we're going to be failing at something. And I really like how you're talking about, the connection with other people. The only thing that I would say is that for me at least, I never developed the skills to connect with me first, right? I see myself in two different personalities, maybe, or like my old self versus my newer self, or higher self versus lower self, whatever you want to say. But I didn't understand how to connect with that individual, right? That the inner child, the child who went through all the things that she went through growing up, like I lost that connection with her. When I started to allow myself to listen to whatever noise was inside and
Yeah.
to block the external noise, is when I started to learn how to accept myself, to have that allowance, and then to realize that failure failure is not the reason. I think the reason why people fear failure so much is because they believe and think that the word failure, the act of failing, means giving up. And that is a habit, that is I mean, if you take a child who's walking for the first time, right? He's going to get up and he's going to take a step and he's going to immediately fall down. Didn't he technically fail?
Mhm.
But would you sit there and say, oh my God, you failed, bad child, right? No, you're not going to say that, because he has to learn. He's going to get up again and he's going to try other ways to be able to learn how to walk. It's the same exact thing, to realize even as adults, we are allowed to get up as many times as you need to, fail as many times as you need to, because failing does not mean you need to give up. Maybe you can redesign it, you can learn from it, you can choose to do something different, great. But don't live in the fear of failure, because if you fail, guess what? You get to hit pause and you get to learn, you get to redesign, you get to change whatever parts of you want to, or the environments that you want to, and then you keep going forward.
Sure. And I'm gonna
Once
kind
you
of
develop
go
that
ahead.
within yourself, then yeah, go ahead. Please. No, please.
You go ahead. I'm going to save my question.
Okay, sounds good. So when I look at the word failure, I define it as a teachable moment. We've had this discussion before, you and I, and from that, we've also had the discussion on the term ignorance before as well.
Yes, we have.
Yep. So it brings up the term ignorance. It basically having the self-awareness to know that you're ignorant, because we don't know everything. We don't have all the answers. So sometimes we go into situations and we have no clue what we're doing. And having that self-awareness, having that understanding that you're going into it ignorant and blind, and not having the I guess, what's the term for it? Oh boy.
Like perfectionism, like the
Uh
know-it-all, like I know everything.
right, that, and going into it with not I'm trying to think of the word here.
It's
I
gonna come
had
to you.
I had the
It's
word.
right there.
It'll come to you about like 9 p.m. after we're all done with this. Here's
Ah,
Kyle, you think about that.
yep.
I'm going to pose a question
Mhm.
for both of you.
Go for it.
You know, Henna, you talked about losing your connection with yourself, and I think we've all been there. Here's my question. How does that manifest itself? How does that begin? How do you start the process of losing the connection with yourself?
Great question. I think you can answer that in so many different ways, depending on the situation or what someone's going through. So whatever answer I give, it doesn't have to be that exact way, because it's always changing. I think for me, when I was learning how to reconnect with myself, I realized that I never was aware that I've always been there. I wasn't aware that I've always been enough. So when you're reconnecting with yourself, I think it simply starts with allowance and awareness, right? Being aware that you are already everything you've been dreaming about, you've been imagining about, you've been, thinking that in the future, like just like how I used to say, when I lose weight, I will do this, this, or this, right? I limited myself for so long. But I think to regain that connection, it starts with that allowance and acceptance of who you are entirely as a person in that very moment. And then to accept the fact that all these things that you've created in your head that you want to be, you're already that person. Now, once you establish that, go ahead. You have a question.
How do you lose it though? Because
So, yeah.
because realistically, when you're a kid, you get up, you fall down, you keep getting up. So there's absolutely a connection there for yourself to continue trying to continue going. So there's a connection within you, that failure isn't a persistent thing. Where do
We
you
don't know anything about that. Yeah. I think it's just the simple act of being human. We are constantly human trying, human doing, human whatever else you want to think of, human comparing. When we lose our connection to it, and we don't know when it happens, at some point growing up, right? When you're a child, you're really going off of your environment and your instincts, right? A child's going to see a desk right there and they're going to try and get up, use it to get up and walk over, or they'll see that there's a little tiny step, and when they're walking, they need to, try and do something in a certain way. That's coming from straight instincts. So that to me is just being human or human being. So when we're older and we're going through all the things that we're going through and we've lost the connection, we lose the connection of just simply human beings. And we don't know we're doing that. We're not taught about it. And that's okay. The change and the transformation comes from first recognizing it and then reestablishing that connection.
I have a different answer, which is,
What,
but it's somewhat similar. Um,
go for it. Tell me.
mine's pointed though. Mine's, I think I understand a little bit more about where it begins. I think it's trauma, right? It might be very small, it might be very big, but the connection to ourselves is fundamentally about balancing everything, right? Our body, our mind, our soul, everything that comes within, the oscillation of the heart, right? The heart's an oscillator, right? It creates 5,000 times more electromagnetic energy than anything else in the human body. It's powerful. What happens what happens with trauma? It changes the functioning of those things, right? It literally changes how things interact within your body. And I think that's where our loss of connection with ourselves really begins. And if you don't, as a human being, right, if you don't have an understanding of how that trauma has impacted you and how it's thrown you out of balance with, you know with your heart, with your brain, with your organs, right? Like, trauma has literally been linked to things like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, potentially other like physical health issues, which is like, okay, how does a thing that happened 25 years ago create fibromyalgia? How does a thing that happened, how does an experience like that is not physically linked to these disorders or these diseases create the physical bodily impact of having, a chronic illness or some kind of illness in general? Come to me, it comes to this connection with an experience and an interaction of how it was dealt with. And I refer to a number of different books, but one book I haven't really talked a whole lot about is a book called Tribe by Sebastian Younger. I usually recommend it to veterans because it gives a general and overall picture of how PTSD has really been, um, how it's been dealt with over a historical lens. It's not a great uh, historical picture, but it's general. It's good enough. And the idea, like, if you look at tribal societies, thousands of years ago, what you would see is that tribal societies created these manifestations of connection, right? And this is also in a book called Sapiens. I couldn't even say his name. It's a different. I can't say his name. It's a good
All
book
good.
though, right? But
Okay.
it's like 20 hours on Audible. I mean, it's a long book, but
Yikes.
it gives these understandings of how humans developed their connections to each other. And if, as you look at tribal societies, what you would see is that you have different dances for different experiences, different moments. And what these situations created was human connection. So what it did, you'd have a war dance, you'd have a victory dance, you'd have a lost dance, like these different things. You'd gather around the campfire and you would connect with each other, right? The tribe would support each other and help each other through these losses, these victories, these traumas. And we don't have that anymore, right? If you go through, if you go through a sexual assault or a rape, are you supported by society? Absolutely not. Like, I mean,
No.
there's so many stories that you know, are all over the internet that like people have told me that it's so alienating, it's so isolating, right? People within their own families will isolate these survivors, and and that's just one example of a thing, an experience that can happen that can create this loss of connection with yourself. And that's a big one, but there are so many different things, right? A simple disagreement within a family can create can create a trauma, right? It can create this loss of connection with yourself, because as a 6-year-old, when you disagree with your father or when you disagree with your mother and they tell you, what's wrong with you? Are you stupid? Like, you don't even know. And
And that's
what
the
you
trauma.
take from that is traumatic. It doesn't look traumatic, right? Like, you didn't go to war or anything, but you start to gain a picture from what someone else said, and you start to think you're the one that doesn't understand. You're the one that isn't right. And it's interaction and trauma. It's how we I think it's very much how we take the simple interactions in our everyday lives and allow them to impact who we are. And I really think it's that kind of
Mhm.
dichotomy between those two things. And you know, I might be wrong, but I've seen
Yeah.
a lot of people.
No, I Yeah, no, I was gonna just comment on that. I think that, I mean, beautifully said, and this is why I love talking to you or hearing about, your thought process. But I do identify with that and I do talk about that, but I don't think I really thought about it the way you just described it. And for sure it is trauma. I mean, we're living in the false reality that we've created accordance to what other people think of us, and we're
Yep.
assuming what they're thinking about us, right? So I completely agree with that. I think that, or actually, no, there is nothing else to think about. I mean, I agree.
And I'm over here alongside Dylan with his thought process on like trauma being a huge factor in how we lose ourselves. So I just started diving back into the book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? And the very first couple of like the very first paragraph is trauma, how it comes up, what happened, how different people interacted within their environments after that trauma happened. And I think it comes down to having somewhat of an expectation when you go into a certain situation, and that expectation is either far from what you thought it was going to be or way more than you thought it was going to be.
Right.
Mhm.
And having the mindset in that moment to take that trauma and try to shut it out as much as possible, you're losing yourself in that process because all you can think about after that is that certain moment in time and that trauma. And without dealing with it in the right manner, it continues to manifest within you for years afterwards.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Have you,
Mhm.
Hannah, have you read The Body Keeps the
Well,
Score?
and you just use the word man. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Have you read The Body Keeps the Score?
I have not, no, but I've heard that it's a really good book.
It's 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 the book. Like,
The
Ooh,
book.
it's
I'm gonna
the
write it
book.
down. It's the one. Is it the one for me?
I
Okay.
honestly,
No, I'll definitely.
it's my Bible, right? It's the thing that, like, if people want to work with me, it's the thing that I almost always recommend. I mean, mostly people with trauma come to me, so I don't get very many people that haven't been through trauma. So it's obviously there's my kind of picture. I think it can feel a little bit like a textbook, but it honestly is the best thing that you can read to help you understand what you've been through, right? It's not going to tell you everything. Like, if you've been through something very specific, it's not going to give you all the answers, but it's going to give you perspective. It's going to give you understanding. And then to follow that book, I give them Waking the Tiger, which is a somatic experiencing kind of therapy. It's about renegotiation. It's about, kind of rewriting the story of what happened. But I use it as kind of a almost a format and a template for you to do whatever you want with it, right? Like, this is how you renegotiate, and this is how you talk with yourself to recreate this event. This is how you talk to yourself to recreate your life, your expectations, your perspectives, your everything. And
Mhm.
both of those books combined have created a very clear picture for some people. It's obviously very confusing regardless,
Mhm.
but I think the thing that people struggle with the most as humans is that if they, you know, let's say you buy some kind of class or you buy some kind of like therapy or something like that. I think the biggest problem is that people don't have a clear picture of what it's going to look like. What is the step-by-step process? When you're taught how to shoot a basketball or how to kick a soccer ball or how to throw a football, right? It's a step-by-step process. And when we're talking, how do I fix myself? It's not, right? It almost can't be, but at the
You
same
can't
time,
just simply fix yourself like that. Yeah.
right? Like but we as coaches, right, can simplify the first steps and kind of trick people into understanding, or trick people into kind of inspiring themselves to get
Yep.
past the one thing that always trips people up, the first fucking step, right? Like, we need to get you understanding. And honestly, like, most people come to me
What
and
is
like,
step number one? What is step number, like, to the T? What is step number one?
for me or for you?
Ugh, I love that question. Just give me both of them. Give it to me for you, and then what you would say to someone else.
Step number one is perspective, right? You have to understand what it is that you're dealing with, right? Like, if you're going to invade a country, are you just going to invade? Right? This is my military mindset here coming out, right? Are you just going to walk into a country and be like, "Hey, we're here," right? Like, maybe you could do that with, I don't know, like Canada, because they have one battalion of dudes up there sitting in the woods. If you're America, you could probably do that, right? But would you do that with China?
No.
Probably not, right? You would do some research, right? You're talking about invading yourself. And if you don't know yourself, you're going to lose, right? It's this simple
But
concept.
how do you know yourself, though? How do you start the process of knowing yourself?
Pay attention to how other people's did it. How
How
did
other
I
people did it?
how
Okay.
did I do it? How did Kyle do it? How did Henna do it? How did Gary
Mhm.
Vaynerchuk do it? How did Peter Levine do it? How did Bessel van der Kolk do it? How did Simon Sinek do it? Right? It's not just about, like, it could be about books, right? Go read some books, right? It could be go watch some YouTube videos, go listen to some podcasts, right? This is what we're doing right here, right? This is perspective. It's this allowance for yourself, right? I'm using your word, allowance for yourself to
Use it.
actually capture the possibility for that it's possible, right? That's I think one of the hardest things, right? Go ahead.
It is. So I'm going to challenge you, and I want to go take it even a step further, because this is what I like see with clients and people that I talk to. So what about before that? How do you get yourself to first be aware that you want to learn about things, and then you then have that energy to go out there and learn a little bit here, learn a little bit here, and you're gathering your information to start that process. Ooh, yes, go. Go.
Your body will tell you exactly when it is time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what would that look like? Like, what, so if your body's telling you,
Imagine, like, think through this, right? Like, your clients show you this, right? I don't want to live anymore, right? I can't stand this pain. I can't stand this relationship. I can't stand this, right? Like, it's all in the language for me, right? Like, my people that talk to me have a very specific language that they use, very specific. And the people that come out of my sessions do not use that language anymore, right? And if, like, my Instagram post today, I like, it's so remarkable that we're actually talking about this, but my Instagram post today is literally talking about that first step, right? A journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first one. And the first one is words. Your words fucking matter. They are everything. Whether they're inside your head or spoken or written, it doesn't matter. It's the words that you use to describe yourself. If I use the words, "I hate myself," guess what I'm going to believe,
I
right?
hate myself.
If I'm going to talk about myself in every facet of my life like I hate myself, then that's going to be the easiest thing I'll ever learn to believe. And that starts, obviously, at a young age. If your parents don't teach you how to empower yourself, you're already at a disadvantage. Like, that's why I'm starting with my son. I'm like, my son created a shirt that says "believe in himself." about 3 or 4 days ago, he was super, super hard on himself. And I'm like, dude, you created a shirt that says believe in yourself. You can't create that shirt and then not follow its own example. And he looks at me, he's like, you're right. I'm like, dude, here it
That's
is.
the one thing that I feel very responsible for, is to create something or have a platform, or I don't know, create its own university for children,
Yeah.
to start to teach them about affirmation, manifesting, and the power of your mind and the way you speak to yourself. So you nailed it, Dylan. When I was asking like what's the step further than that, it's the simple well, in my world I would say the allowance to be aware of what you're currently saying to yourself.
Yeah.
And then you gather that information like I did. I was gathering all this information, and I one day was just like, fuck this. Like, I'm done. I'm sick and tired of being the underdog, or whatever definition I had given myself. I was just so over it. And I knew that this is just not giving me happiness. So
Right.
I have no other option, because I want to live. I decide to live today. So if I'm deciding to live today, what's my first step? Okay, first step then after that is exactly the steps you talked about, is the education and gathering all of that. And then you just kind of go from there.
You know what really attracts people to me, and I think I'm starting to understand this more and more, is I show people how to actually listen. And that's not with your ears, right? Like, it's not with the headphones that you're listening your music with. I'm talking about how to listen to your body, how to listen to your past, how to listen to your future, how to listen to the world that's happening around you. I don't care really what you say. It's how you say it that matters. And what people take from me when they listen to me has nothing, it almost doesn't have anything to do with the words that I say. It's how I say it to them, right? Like, my best videos are for some reason, it's the videos that are like deeply like sensing, almost like, how are you kind of stuff. They like, for some reason, like, this is a new thing for me, but my voice, like, people like my voice, and I'm like, awesome. I didn't even know that was a thing. But when I speak to people, they're like, holy cow, this guy is calming me down. What are you doing? Right. And it's for maybe for the first time in their life, they're realizing that they can actually listen to this sensation that is going through their body, and allow it to be a moment where of wake up, right? Like, I don't want, here's the thing, I think you probably feel this too. I don't want to go search for people
Oh
to
yeah.
work with me.
I never search.
I don't.
I have never searched for anyone.
So the first step, like, for us, like, as coaches, the first step isn't to pull you and say, hey, you need to hear this. It's for you to find us, right? You almost have to realize, like, there's something wrong and I need to change, right? And that's the body, right? The body's telling you, right? Like, you said it. You were like, I'm tired of this, right? Like, depression is a fucking sign. Anxiety is a sign. ADHD, ADD, PTSD, bipolar, all of these things are a sign of what needs to happen, what needs to change, right? I've seen studies, it was a long time ago, and I haven't seen the research since, but bipolar in children was potentially curable 5 or 6 years ago when I read this study. By love.
Wow.
Right? Like, there's a potential where, and this is why I don't look at mental illnesses and mental disorders and whatever you want to call them. I don't like them. I think the DSM is a waste of time. It's just a simple categorization.
It's labels. It's all these
Yeah.
labels that we're enforcing in ourselves, or other people are giving us, which I'm not going to negate that, some of them, yes, you have to kind of take it case by case. But in the general population, we use the word anxiety and depression so much,
Right.
so much that it becomes part of our vocabulary.
Right.
So whenever we're stressed out, then automatically our mind is going and our body is going to remember
Yeah.
having an anxiety attack, and then in that very moment, you're not really going through anything, but suddenly you are going to be in that flight or fight mode because now your mind and your body remembers what was in the past. And now you're going to be living that.
Tell me this. Tell me this. This is going to speak to you. You just confirm, right? In our clients, in the people that we work with, mental disorders are death sentences when they first find us. Is that your experience? If I have depression, if I have anxiety, if I have CPTSD or PTSD or bipolar, I have it for the rest of my life, no matter what. I'm going to die with it.
Yeah. I guess I've never thought of it being as like a death sentence because I don't think I've like thought of it that way, but I definitely would say it is a form of that where the second you identify yourself by a label that someone else is giving you, then you are going to embody that, right?
Yep.
Or because like, okay, for example, I know I've experienced depression, like clinical depression, where my body is shutting down. I cannot get up. I am my mind, everything, right? When you look it up, I know I've experienced that. Now, I know that I am not a depressed human being. I've experienced depression and I then overuse that word depression, but that is not who I am. So if then that means, you know, what you just said, as far as it being a death sentence and you really embodying that, then yes, I would agree with that. But also the other side of it is that
Right.
it's, as the second you label it yourself.
Right. And what I mean by that is you know, you can go through my comment section on some of my deeper videos and people will be like, I have PTSD. I'm never coming back from this. And in some cases, you will live with that PTSD for a long time, right? It's the scar, right? Like you cut your arm and it's a deep, if you get a deep cut, guess what? You're going to have a pretty big scar and that's going to remain for the rest of your life. But if you live with that idea that PTSD is going to run your life for the rest of your life, where's that going to go? What is that going to provide you? Because that's, you know, that's the very thing, you know, again, it goes back to words. It goes back to the interaction within ourselves and without ourselves of how we speak about who we are and our own self-image, right? Like the self-image is so powerful. And if we focus on these mental, like this is why I hate diagnoses, is that you get this picture, you know, you are depression, you are depression, right? Then you are stuck inside this box. If you don't know, if you've never been taught, here's the thing, if you've never been taught to step outside that box, right? Like I'm a little bit of a savage, so some people tell me like, hey, you're this, and I'm
Little
like,
bit, total savage.
right? Like people tell me like, hey, you're this, and I'm like, fuck, I am, right? Like, no, I'm not. And then I research it and then I look into it and I'm like, maybe a little bit, you know? Like, but if you've never been,
well, that comes from when you
go ahead.
go ahead. Sorry. No, I was just gonna say that honestly comes from developing a brand new label or a brand new sense of understanding of who you are, right? Reestablishing that connection with yourself. Because when you have that connection, you're confident. You're like, this is what I tell my clients all the time is, and this actually happened. So one of my clients were celebrating a year of working together in a couple of weeks here, which like still blows my mind, right? Like I'm so proud of this individual. But I remember one of the first things that she asked me and that she was struggling with, she was like, you know, how do you have this self-confidence? How are you okay with failing at things? Why don't you live in fear anymore? How did you change that? And I had a hard time answering that because there are steps and there are answers and there are methods, and we've gone through those steps now after a year later, right? But it's almost like this feeling, this feeling of, I already know. I've done it enough times. I've practiced it enough times where I know that I'm going to do a situation and I may fail at it. I'm going to be really, really uncomfortable, but I know that that is not everything to me, that I will see whatever I'm supposed to see in that moment. So with that energy, I can say I have a lot of self-confidence. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, doesn't mean I'm conceited. I just know that I may take a step, and I have actually a little like story I may read you guys if we have time, but it's
Yeah.
really short. It's not really a story, but it's phenomenal. But
Yeah.
I know that, are you guys okay with it actually? Because I'm gonna quickly
Go
grab
for
it
it.
and read it to
Yeah.
you guys.
I'm all
But
about it.
I know that, I know, right? I know that I am going to make mistakes, and that's totally fine because I'm going to learn from it, because it is not my everything. It is not who I am, and I'm not identified by it. And let's see, it's saved in one of my pictures.
I think you know, here's a thought that came up while you were talking about that. You know,
Mhm.
when we look at people that have been through trauma and people who haven't, normally I think most people look at people who have been through trauma as you've been set back. And I almost disagree with that, because
Oh, I so
it's
disagree with that.
it's such a short-term picture. Like, yeah, sure, you're set back until you figure out how powerful you are, because when
Mhm.
you've been to war, right, whether it's real war or within yourself, right, when you've
Mhm.
been to war, when you've overcome it, nothing can stop you, right? I want to be a testament to that. Like, you will not stop me. And realistically, what
Mhm.
I see is that, having been through the wars that I've been through, and then I talk to people who have not, sure, you're successful, but far more often, you're not happy with yourself, because you've never tested yourself. You've never pushed yourself to the limits of what a human can go through and what a human can feel. Like, I am very much in tune with how I feel and what I've been through. And I feel great right now. I'm 31 years old. I've been through some hard stuff, but I feel great. I feel so at peace, right? Like, sure, I have a lot of work to do, but I'm like, whatever. Like, I'm making money. I'm taking care of my family. I'm having fun. Right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I'm having
Yes.
conversations with awesome people all the time. You know, sure, I've gotten criticized. You know, the other day I had someone want to get out of my text platform and was very negative about it, and I was like, okay, I hope you have a good life. I hope you enjoy your weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like, I'm sorry
Yeah.
that this isn't the thing for you, and that you treat me this way, and that's okay. But you know what? Doesn't matter to me.
I would even celebrate that person, however they said it and however it may have come across. I would celebrate that person for having the power and the encouragement to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I'm out."
Uh,
Good. Amazing.
it wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So see, it's all about context. But
Yeah.
if someone is, well, even if someone's being negative to me and giving me harsh whatever, I'm so okay with that, because you can't get me, bro. You can't touch me. You can't
Yeah,
change
Yeah.
this work
that's me.
that I've done. Now, it can affect me in certain ways, and I may embody it in certain ways, but I also know that you're not going to get me.
And I look at it this way with
Mhm.
situations like that, the first things that they normally say to you aren't going to come out perfectly the way they want it to come out. It may
Yep.
come out broken, it may come out harsh, like more harsh than they really anticipated it coming out. It's just raw emotion coming out at that point. You can't take it for face value sometimes.
People
Never. Yeah.
people are ignorant. So ignorant, right? It goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, you know,
Yeah.
of like you don't know people, right? Like, this
Right.
person, and I'll give you the example, right? Like, I don't even
Right.
know the person's name, honestly. Like,
Okay.
in my text community, it doesn't even have a name. So
Okay.
this person was like, you're please take me off the list. You're a fucking nagging nanny every day. And you don't even help people. All you do is do this for fame.
Wow.
That's what they said. Like, that's the first thing. And I'm like, I I'm sorry that you feel that way. I disagree with you know, your vision of me. And that's how I responded, but I'll take you off. I respect your
Yeah.
opinion, and I'll take you off the list.
Yeah.
You know, when that person said that to me, I was like, I don't even, it doesn't even bother me, right?
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, I would have been destroyed by that. You know,
Yeah.
now I'm like,
Yeah.
you don't even know, man. Like, you don't even know.
You don't
why
even
I
know me. Yeah,
Right,
exactly. Yeah.
like I physically laughed when I saw that, because I'm like,
Yeah.
one, I love the insult. It was actually funny because I never would have expected someone to say that to me.
Yeah.
But I'm like, you have no idea why I do this. And if you haven't followed my content to understand, that's just that's
That's
ignorance.
okay.
And I'm sorry. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry that you feel that way. I really am. But that's your own fault for not understanding my purpose. And she was
Yes.
like, I texted you on TikTok, or I messaged you on
Mhm.
TikTok. I'm like, I've got 500 messages on TikTok. I'm sorry. I don't check that as much anymore.
Yeah, you,
Mhm.
But if you literally texted me, I would have responded. And that was one of her gripes, was like, you never responded to me on TikTok. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I
you made
wish.
this
You know what?
texting
It
platform.
breaks my heart. It honestly, as you were saying that word for word, like my heart broke a little bit to know that this is what this person was saying. Not because she's saying it to you, but it's
Right.
just that
That's how
that
she
person
feels.
feels that's how she's feeling.
Yeah.
Whether her thought is correct or not correct, that's not the issue here, because we already know that she doesn't know the story. She doesn't know where you're coming from, and
Right.
that's okay. But it breaks my heart that there's an individual out there that has that feeling.
Right.
And that's where that allowance or acceptance comes in, of like just realizing that people are people and they're limited in their own
Yep.
belief systems, and there are certain ones that are willing to restructure that. And I feel like this is going to connect perfectly to this little story that I'm going to read you guys
Yes.
whenever you're ready, unless
Go
there's
for it.
something. Okay. So it's called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk. Did I read this to you the first time when we were doing this talk? No, right? Okay.
I don't believe so.
This has rocked. Okay, I don't think so either. But this has rocked my world. It's something that I will read to my clients, especially in the first session, when they're just in that mode, and it's just like you can see the victim mentality, you can see the back and forth, you can see the limited wall, or the wall actually that they've created, even though they're seeking your guidance and they're there, but they're still having this wall up. So I'll usually pull this little picture out and I'll read it. So, and I'll send it to you guys, and please feel free to use it because it's not
Sure.
mine.
Mhm.
But it's called There's a Hole in My Sidewalk. Chapter 1. I walk down the street and there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend that I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It takes time. It takes a very long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it's there. I still fall in. It's a habit, but my eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Now, chapter 5, probably the best chapter in this entire thing. Chapter 5. I walk down a different street. Simple.
Yep.
And that's the story.
Yep. Simple. That's what we do. That's
So
pretty
So
much what we do.
to me, this is what we do. It's this acceptance of knowing that, one, in the beginning, right? They don't know there's a hole in the sidewalk. They fall in. They're in the victim mentality of like, why me? This always happens to me. It's everyone else's fault, and I have no control in my life, so I blame everyone around me. But eventually, you get to a place where you can see it's there, and you do fall in because it's out of habit, because we're used to doing the same thing over and over again. But the difference now is that you're aware of it, your eyes are open, and you know the steps to come back out. And then chapter 4 is about, you see it's there and you just decide to walk around it. So you're like, you know what, I'm going to walk around it. Now, the true transformation that I want my clients or anyone to, embody within themselves, or for me to constantly remind myself, is that even when you go through all these chapters in your life, right? And you're going to constantly be going through this in all different moments in your life. But the transformation comes from accepting everything, allowing yourself to accept it all, feel what you need to feel. And then in the morning, when you wake up in the morning and you open that door and you're walking down the street, you just decided, hey, I already know what's down this pathway. I know there's the hole. I know all of this stuff. I decide today to go right. I'm going to go down a completely different pathway. I don't know how many holes there are. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't give a fuck because I'm excited. I'm ready to go. And this is what's going to be really exciting for me. I'm meant to go right. I'm meant to go down a different pathway. We're going to see what happens. That's the true transformation.
Yep. I love it. I love it. And I love that I love that you're swearing now too. It's great because it doesn't make me feel isolated.
Well, you swear, and I'm like, oh, we can swear
Kyle-
here. Shit, you just opened up a whole thing.
Yeah, Kyle doesn't swear that much, so it's mostly me on this show.
I'm waiting for that one episode that I'm just like absolutely
Fuck it.
fired up about. Let's get it.
Oh, it's gonna happen. Oh, I can't wait.
Well, Kyle, do you have any questions for Henna?
Honestly, if there was one quote or one thing that you could say to people that are struggling with the same things that you went through, what would you say?
Ooh, a quote.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to have to go back to the weight of your mind is heavier than the weight of your body. So whether you struggle with physically gaining weight or losing weight or nutrition or a relationship or career, your body is here, right? It's a real thing. But your mind, your soul, your what is living up here, your thoughts is so much heavier than whatever you think is physically in front of you. So when you accept that and you start to go into it, that's when you listen to negative thoughts and you can then change the narrative of your mind by saying the opposite, and you say it over and over and over again. There is power behind manifestation and law of attraction and affirmations. I mean, earlier, Dylan, you said, you trick people, right? To like start that's exactly what I do. And that's what I did for myself is I tricked myself in believing that I'm already everything I've ever wanted to be. I'm aware of it. Now, naturally, I end up taking certain steps and doing certain things that are going to continue myself down that path.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm like, if you want to overcome something that you don't believe in, you have to trick yourself. That's the facts, right? Like if you've been negative all your life, you will not believe that you can be positive until you start doing the thing that you want to do consistently. So you have to talk positively, or you have to stop being negative, right? It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Miwan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great resource for that. But taking the step back and saying, I'm not going to be negative myself. I'm going to say something positive, even though I don't believe it. And if I do that consistently, I can create a different thought pattern for myself. It's not that simple in some cases, but it can be for a lot of people. Where it becomes complex is the trauma, the very deep trauma where,
right.
It's the, it's the interaction of yourself and your trauma in general, and the memory issues come into play. That's honestly where a lot of my work is trauma. I don't have a ton of clients that haven't been through a lot of things, a lot of hardships. And there's nothing wrong with that. I value working with them because they teach me so much. One question I had for you, what are some of the what are some of the things, obviously since September, since we last spoke, that you've really learned from life, from your work, from the clients that you have? Like what are a few of the things that you've really gained from the past, I guess it's been about 6 months, 7 months of life?
Ooh, that's a heavy, heavy question because I could say a gajillion things and I could also say absolutely nothing, right? I think in the last couple of months since we last spoke, the biggest thing that I have connected to or learned is, I'm going to say it again, is just learning how to allow myself further and further and further, that my voice has a purpose and a passion. My presence in this world has a purpose and passion. So I think actually, I'll know. Now I know my answer. In the last actually 2 months, I've really understood that what my passion is and what my purpose is, right? And I know that my passion is for me. I will wake up every single day discovering what I'm passionate about is me, and learning and growing and listening and talking and experiencing life. From my passion, my purpose is born, right? And I used to say this before, and I don't think I actually really understood it until recently. And I think it's going to constantly, open and have all those Henna moments. But my purpose is then for others, right? My purpose is to show you, or just, help talk to you, or just listen to you. It's for other people.
Mhm.
But my purpose is nothing without knowing what my passion is. What am I passionate for? What drives me? And I'm able to clearly identify certain things. I think that's been my biggest thing.
I love it.
Absolutely.
And it totally confirms my thoughts on values.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, that's it. That's it, right? Like when you really start to look at everything through the lens of, the lens of yourself, you start to recognize just what's needed within your
Yeah.
life. You
Yeah.
don't need the excess. You don't need the, too much. You need what you need, and you give what you can rather than you give everything, right?
Yes.
And I love that, and that's so good for you, especially because of what we do, right? Like it's such a profound thing that we do, and it's such a hard thing because it's easy to sit here and question yourself. I certainly have done it myself. I'm just a life coach. I'm just a mental health coach, right? It's kind of where my niche is right now.
Yeah.
Um, what qualifications do I have? Because people have asked me, and I say, I don't have nothing, right?
Me too.
And it's
Nothing.
like that answer does not bother me, like it used to, because I used to measure myself in comparison to other people that have qualifications, and I'm like, some of those people, what I'm learning from my clients, should not be qualified the way they are qualified, right? Like so many people tell me horror stories, absolute horror stories of working with therapists and counselors, and
Mhm.
like that doesn't make me hate all therapists and counselors, but there are certainly people that are not qualified to do the job that they're doing. And
Mhm.
I like where I'm at. I don't want to get
Can
qualifications.
can I tell you a secret why
Yeah.
you're good at what you do? And it's life coaching, because it's easy to just say life coaching because it's so
Yeah.
hard to really identify it.
Right.
It's because you are simply human being. You're just a friend. You
Yeah.
become someone, or you have become someone who just can sit there and listen
Yeah.
and reflect, right? You don't tell people, here are the steps to change your life. If you don't follow these steps, then you're out. Sorry, it's not going to work out,
Yeah.
right? You just listen, and
Right.
you allow, and you guide, and you become a friend, right? That's my biggest thing, is I want to connect with my clients, which is also one of my biggest struggles, because the more and more I connect with them, the more and more I give of myself, and then I am completely exhausted and drained and depleted. So
Mhm.
my challenge right now is learning to step back. I mean, I stopped making a lot of TikTok videos, stopped making a lot of content. I get now overwhelmed when I'm posting on Instagram, because I'm constantly comparing myself, or I should be doing this, or I should be doing this. And I'm like, well, fuck that. Like, no, I allow myself to take a break in whatever way I need to take a break. I don't need to aesthetically please people online of what I do. I don't need to explain myself. I allow myself to feel called to post when I want to post, when I
Mhm.
want to share, because I again go back to my passion. My passion is for me, and my passion is helping people. But if I'm constantly feeding my purpose before my passion, then I'm depleted and drained. So I have to set those boundaries. I have to let people know that, hey,
Yeah.
allow me to, I mean, now it's in my contract, and it is like highlighted and bolded, allow me 24 hours to 48 hours to respond to you. Now I probably will respond sooner than that, or even longer than that, but everybody knows that I will tell them I'm busy. I have a lot going on. You know I'm here. And this
Yeah.
is maybe a trick that you guys can use is I always tell them, send me a voice memo. If you're going through something in that moment and you really need someone, I can guarantee you that you know how to get yourself to wherever you need to get to because I see it in our sessions, right? I don't tell you how to change something or how to feel. I just ask certain questions and then you figure it out yourself already in front of me. So
Yeah.
instead of me responding to you or getting on the phone with you, how about you send me a voice message and process it? And now I have clients who will send me like the entire day of random ones, right? As they're processing. And then I'll listen to them like, oh my God, like this is just, it's perfect. It works
Right.
out. And they didn't need me in that moment. And that was hard for me to have that boundary because I just want to
Yeah.
rescue everyone and just always be there. But there's only one Henna.
Right. Yeah, Kyle.
I believe that comes down to just having, yes, you're having the empathy for them, but you also have to have that accountability switch for yourself. You have to
Oh, man.
know.
Yes.
I mean, but no, seriously,
Fuck yes, dude.
having that
Yes.
accountability switch for yourself, knowing that hey, you're not here to help them solve their problem for them.
Mhm.
You're there to simply give them the tools that they can go home and use to help themselves.
Yeah. I don't teach people how to be
I
me.
want my clients to tell me one day, hey, I don't need you anymore. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm same, right? Like I don't teach my clients to be me. I I offer them how to be themselves,
Mhm.
right? Like how are you going to do it, right? Like I can show you how I did it, but that doesn't mean that you're going to do it my way and win, right? You might do it my way and lose, right? You might fall apart. You might destroy yourself trying to beat me, right? Like maybe you're not meant to be an influencer, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
it's not in your cards. You don't have to be, right? And maybe it's not in my cards for the rest of my life. I don't know. What I do know,
Mhm.
it's working for me right now. I
Right.
enjoy it. I like making videos, especially with this. I got a new camera, so it just makes things super easy,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
Like I love it and it's fun. And it kind of goes back to the early days of like 2020 when I was doing it. I was like, wow, but like it's the very same challenges, right? Like I went through my own phase of trying to determine if I'm growing as a business and I can't continue on the level of content creation I was doing in 2020. I just
Mhm.
can't. I had the time to actually functionally do it. Now I am inundated with one-on-one sessions and I'm working with people all the time and I can't just sit here and be on camera making content the whole time. I've got a family, I've got a business to manage as well. Like that is my challenge right now is getting to this point where I can pay other people to do what I do, right? Where where I do the podcast, I do the meetings, right? I set up my coaching calls and my group sessions that I'm going to be starting up soon. Where I'm just doing the thing that I love to do and I'm paying someone else a great wage to support me and help me and keep them happy so that I can be happy, right? Like there are things that I'm doing in my business that I don't like to do, and that's okay. I understand the need for it, right? Like again, we kind of go back to wants and needs. Like I understand the need for it because I don't have the capital within the business to pay someone else to do it. And what that requires for me is to challenge myself to one, learn the task, and two, push myself to do a task I don't fucking want to do and develop that perseverance and that persistence to say, I know my goal. And my goal is once I create this, I can I can offload this to someone that wants to do it or likes the money enough to do it for me.
That's
And
good. So you have hired someone to do that for you?
not
Sorry.
yet.
Not yet. Okay. So
It's
you are going through it.
it's coming, right? Like
It's coming. Oh, yes.
like it this I think I thought 2020 was going to be the year that I like blew up, but blowing up is multifaceted, right? Like you can blow up on social media and it doesn't get you anywhere, right? Like certainly it's helped my business. I've gained some incredible clients, but my whole purpose behind starting this was to help as many people as I possibly can. And what 2020 taught me was the deep connection that I know how to make. And what it's also given me is this knowledge, right? It's given me this wisdom to understand how people think, how people learn, how people develop, how people look at the problems that they have. And now I can hyper focus in ways to give them that knowledge in other ways, right? Like so quite frankly, I'm not giving all my strategy away, but Facebook, Instagram ads are going to be a thing for me, right? And I'm going to be doing coaching workshops with more people than just one. Developing paid ads and funnels and the things that I never knew existed a year ago when I started my business of like this is how you connect with people in the modern marketing age, right? Like I'm learning things that I never thought I had to learn. And it's also
Have you
allowed
read the
me.
.com series?
I have not.
The .com series? Ooh,
No.
okay. I'm going to send those titles to you. Read it because that's exactly what you're working on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm growing, right? Like, I mean, that's the whole goal, but
Mhm.
it's something that like initially I was like, I don't want to do this. This is so much work. And now I'm realizing that it's when you start to connect with the future of what you're trying to accomplish, right? Where's your passion? Where's your purpose? That this is a stepping stone to get to that purpose, right? Like I want to help everyone in the world. I know it's not possible, but it's a dream that I can look towards and say, you're getting closer. You're
Mhm.
getting a lot closer. And I have the voice, I have the ability, I have the knowledge, and what I think I have the best ability to do is learn, right? Like it's my value. Learning is my value. So whether I have all of what is needed for later on doesn't matter. I'll learn it. I'll figure it out
Mhm.
and I'll take from people and I'll learn from people in a way that other people can't because that's who I am. It's
Mhm.
always been who I am.
Because you allow yourself to
Abs-
just do all of those things and change it as many times as you need to.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm at is I'm developing, in a space where I've never really been before, and that's business. And it's
Right.
it's pretty it's pretty fun.
Literally goosebumps. I'm telling you, like, I mean, every video I've seen of yours, or just even listening to you talk like this, like inspirational to the max, because those are things that I don't like doing either. Like, I don't really want to
Right.
spend a lot of time learning how to run a business online and sales funnel. Like, I hate that stuff so much with a passion. Like, I just want to talk to people and listen to people and somehow be financially successful. I just wish it could happen, but I know that it doesn't work that way, right? So
Yep.
just even hearing the way you've processed it and thinking about it, I mean, it just gives me life. Like I'm excited. Like I want to, crack out some of these books and start to relearn some of this stuff because you're right. Like it's this is how it is, and this I allow myself to learn and constantly grow. I will ask you a question. Do you think that as you talk to more and more people, and this question is for both of you guys, as you guys talk to more and more people and you connect and you see them having like the dumb moments, you're going to use that as an example, or seeing their shift and they're changing their mind and they're having all of this self love, does that give you, I mean, maybe not life, but does it help you with your current journey? Because we're always learning and growing, right? We don't know it all. We struggle, we cry, we have pain, we question ourselves all the time. Do you feel that the more you talk to and inspire, you end up being inspired yourself?
Kyle, why don't you start?
I look at it this way, right? Um, if that is your sole purpose, is to put yourself in those situations where you are talking to people and you see the direct impact of what you are preaching, like your value, and you are instilling it in people. Um, yeah, I would say yes, it does give you a sense of like remembering your why in a sense. Why am I doing this? Now I remember why I'm doing this, and I'm going to keep
Mhm.
doing this because it's obviously working.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Hmm.
Okay. Oof.
I say yes, very, very similar to Kyle in a sense that I think it's very valuable to see your impact. Um, but I have learned throughout my life that your impact can also um, degrade your ability to learn. And if you if you focus so much on validation, if you focus so much on the impact that you have on people,
Yep.
you can learn to become someone you're not.
Yep.
And I so how I do that is I I have created the person that I wish I had when I was a kid, right? So it's this sense of purpose that no one no one can fulfill, right? No one can fulfill who I am right now but me. So there's always a sense of, yes, I appreciate the validation and the understanding of, like, Dylan, you're doing a good job, but it isn't what drives me. What drives me will always be the sense of purpose that I have for the person that I was, and that need that I always knew other people needed. And it's the reason that I wrote my book in the first place. And my book is what drove me to become who I am, because it empowered me to actually talk about the things that nobody else talked about. I talk
Mhm.
about suicide, and I talk about the hardships of life and getting to that point where I put a gun to my head, like it's like, what are you having for lunch tomorrow? I have, in my entire life, I have never met someone that was so willing to talk about things like that as I have. And I have literally fulfilled that purpose of becoming that person that I needed when I was 6 years old and 7 years old, when I was struggling at the hardest point in my life to understand what the fuck is life, right? And that will always be the thing that drives me more than any validation or any criticism out there. It's the thing that burns within my soul to help people. And it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with me.
So goosebumps, like, and you again, like, I maybe I'm really animated right now, but like, it's just, this is why I love talking to you or hearing you speak. So, and I may have worded the question a little bit differently. So yes, I completely agree. To be who you are is not in accordance to being validated by other people, right?
Right.
But for me as an individual, I know I struggle with validating myself. I forget. I get into my head. I
Yeah.
overthink. I'm still learning. So, for me to remind myself what my passion is, what my purpose is, my passion is me, right? So, when I'm doing my purpose, which is talking to other people and hearing and learn, I end up learning. My clients probably don't even realize how much I learn about who I am as a person as I'm talking to them. Not because of them validating me, saying, oh my God, Hannah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much. Not that part, but the part of re-explaining a story or a scenario or listening, or
100%.
because every single
Oh, yeah.
person is so different. That part of it feeds my soul. It reminds me, it teaches me more and more. So all of my clients are my little storybooks that I'm learning from, because I have to adjust the way I say certain things or re-explain certain things, because some people are not going to, everybody has a different love language, right? Everybody's
Yep.
going to understand things differently. So I'm ready and willing and allowing myself to change whatever I need to change so that I would be getting through to them, but because it's teaching me.
Yep.
So what I meant was exactly how you explained it, but to continuously learn even from working with clients. And that's how I feed my passion and my purpose.
Absolutely. I think that's the creation of confidence, in a way, is that you're able to, right, like the first time I talked to Kyle it wasn't perfect. It helped him, clearly, but I think now Kyle sees and you can obviously confirm this, Kyle, but
Right.
I think you see a very different version of me since the first time we talked, right?
I would definitely say so. Yeah.
Because the first time we talked, it was
What is the story, by the way? Or if you guys don't mind telling me, you can tell me later too. But
so me and Kyle met when we became a team on COVID orders. So we were a National Guard team, collected to give COVID tests, right?
mhm.
And so we had about 30 people, and I became like a shadow NCOIC, so I was like third in command. Because we had two Air Force people that didn't know how the Army worked, so I kind of became that. I was that top Army um, NCO, and Kyle was one of my soldiers, and it was probably our second mission or so. Um, Kyle started listening to a podcast that I was on from one of my good friends, Ryan,
Yep.
and it was probably the deepest I've ever gone into talking about suicide um, on on a podcast. I mean, it was like my friend Ryan, and keep this in mind. My friend Ryan had no clue about any of this, and me and Ryan go way back to college, right? This is like 10 years ago, and it was the first time he had ever heard me talk about this experience that he was literally like he was in the class that I left um and went home and I was going to commit suicide. He was in the class before I did this, right? So he had
Yeah.
no clue, and I didn't even realize it. I didn't realize the profoundness of that. But Kyle listened to that one night, and then the next day was like, "Hey, can I talk to you?" And it kind of gave me the context about what his situation was, and talked about his, the darkness that he was facing, um, and from that point on, I think we just kind of stuck around,
Stucker. Yeah.
and
Wow.
it was just, for us, it was just a moment where we were, one, it was like no rank, like I'm not your authority right now. I'm just here, right? And that's kind of what I do in my sessions. Like I
Mm.
I am not your therapist. Do not look up to me.
Mhm.
Look next
Yeah.
to me. Like I'm sitting shoulder to shoulder with you, right? Like and if there's one thing that I don't talk about very often, it's leadership. And Kyle knows best of all, honestly, about how I feel about leadership. And it's something that I think once I actually start being recognized about talking about it, it will change some people's perspectives, and it's going to be a book that I write eventually. But
Oh, yes.
you know, leadership is such a profound thing, and if you always stand as an authority figure, you're never really leading. If you can't sit down on the level of the people that you're leading and support them and understand them, then you're really not connecting with what they need. And Kyle, at that point in his life, needed to talk to a friend. He needed to talk to a person, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle, but like you just needed someone to express yourself to, and to feel what you were feeling and allow that. And I think that's what I did for him, and I did that for many others on that team. As I became NCOIC, and December came around, and we left, but me and Kyle kind of stuck around, and was like,
Here we
"Hey,
are.
you want to start a podcast and keep going?" And he's
Yeah.
been great. Like it's and here we are, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
And here we are. Yeah.
there's so much to mine and Kyle's relationship, but it's
It,
great.
it's great and it's growing every day, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so the way I look at that situation that you just described pretty well, I would say it was pretty damn near spot on.
Yeah.
Um, so going along the leadership role, I don't think I've ever had someone of higher rank at the time actually, in a sense, strip off their uniform and be like, let's talk. What, like, face to face. And in my almost, I would say, a little over 9 years of being in the military now, it's crazy to see that I'm finally getting a leader that will actually sit there and look you eye in the eye, like eye to eye, and be like, I hear you.
And I think another important part of that is also, when the workday comes, hold you accountable to what you have to
Yeah.
do, and respect when you can't. There were certain times where people didn't have the ability to do the job, and if I had if I had treated them differently, I think there would have been a different outcome, but I was able to treat them with respect, treat them with the dignity that they earned by wearing the uniform. And I treat everybody equally. You know, like if you have problems, you have problems. Just talk to me about it. You know, and I create that space not just in my sessions, but in my life to show people
Mhm.
like if you're struggling and I can help, please talk to me. If you don't, I understand, but eventually we're gonna have the conversation. Um, you know, it's and I know
We're gonna have the talk.
right. Like here's
Yeah.
here's the thing. If you would have talked to me, this could have happened, and it's we're here now, and I give people the reality. You know, as a leader, I I want people to understand the reality. I want people to know I am going to hold you accountable. I have to like, especially military, especially infantry, specifically. I have to be a savage, right? Like that's part of my fucking job description, and
You're just such a badass.
you know, I'm not the most badass. I'm just, I just do what I have to do, and part of my job description is to make men, you know, into the people that can kill for the U.S. military. That's what infantry does: is we go out, we kill the enemy comes, kills us. We're the pawns. As unfortunate as that is, it's the reality, and it requires callousness, it requires hardness, but in the grand scheme of things, we're still human, and the infantry really suffers from that callousness and that hardship, that we feel like we have to be the hardest men out there, and we have to prove ourselves, and we have to be better than everybody else. But at the end of the day, what it does is it creates leaders that are willing to look at the mission rather than look at the men. um,
Hmm.
and it creates toxicity. It creates the idea that if you are weak, if you show any kind of weakness, if you fail a PT test, if you fail anything, you are worthless. It creates that. And as a leader, I've seen that for the past 13, almost 14 years now. And I've hated it. Every single time I saw it, I hated it. And I was willing to step up against, some of the leadership that I've seen. And some people don't like me. And I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm perfectly okay with that, because one of my values is integrity. And I'm willing to say, I know what's right, even though the army doesn't look at it as right, or you don't look at it as right. I don't give a shit. I'm going to support this guy. I'm going to take care of this
Hmm.
guy. And unlike other leaders that talk about integrity, I prove it, because
Oh,
part of
yeah.
part of my life, part of who I am, is showing people the way forward, not just talking about the way
Right.
forward. And
Hmm.
Kyle's seen that. Kyle's
Oh yeah.
seen me make decisions that were not the right decisions for the army. And I took that on the chin. If I knew full well, if we were caught, I'd take that on the chin. And I was fully okay with that, because it was a decision that had to be made either for the people or the mission the that had been proven, right? The unit
Yeah.
had proven that they weren't going to take care of us. And if I didn't, no one was going to take care of us. Um,
And
so
I bet you, Kyle, you were following Dylan no matter what, because of how he, like you said, sat with you eye to eye and said, "Let's talk," and just listened, right?
So,
Because
yep.
of creating that value.
Yep. So I look at it this way. After that day, um, really getting to sit down and talk to him, it was more or less, all right, what can I take? What value? I had to sit there and process and the confrontation, and a lot of value came from it. And from that day on, I was like, what else am I missing here? So I kept digging in a little bit,
a lot of
learning a
conversations.
lot of conversations, a lot of hey, what if, or hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me rationalize this in my
The
brain
what
so I
if,
can get through
yeah.
it? Yep. And there was a lot of talks, and just going through that and seeing how effective it was, even if it wasn't always right to the military, we got the job done, and it was
You got the job done.
with very very little
People
casualties.
take care of each other.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
I mean, I have to say, but oh, go ahead.
well, I mean, that's what I want, right? Like, I want to get the job done, but to get the job done requires the people to do the job, right? Leadership is is supporting people and doing the work, right? I'm not doing the work. I can step down to their level and do the work if I need to, but then again, that's not always the right
Not
answer.
leading.
You
Yeah.
know, that's right. It's leading by example in some circumstances, but it can also be micromanagement in others. So
Mhm.
my job isn't to micromanage. My job isn't necessarily to lead by example when I come to a certain level, especially military. It comes down to how can I support the people doing the job? And sometimes, and I think so many military leaders and military soldiers in general can attest to this, the army will not take care of you. The army will always take care of itself. And you can apply this to any organization. The organization will always outlast the people. And if you're unwilling to accept
They
that,
forget that they're human beings.
right. And if you're unwilling to accept that the organization is always going to outlast the people, then you will fall into this trap of not taking care of people first. You know, because at the core of it, if you don't create an organization that supports people or has some kind of checks and balances about supporting people, the people are going to lose. And who the fuck wants to work for an organization that doesn't take care of its people? It's just not a good environment. It's not a good place. So that's what I create is
I
yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, I cannot wait to the day where I'm watching you being interviewed on Ellen or Oprah or any of these like networks out there. I know it's happening. Like it's gonna be all of that. I just, I mean, this is why you're such an amazing coach because you're just a good human being, right? You're vulnerable and and it's not even just about being introverted or out extroverted or whatever we want to be. It's just you just get it. You're just normal human, right? This
Yeah.
is where we come from.
Yep.
Is this feeling, this what you're saying. This is why you're such a great coach or leader and you're able to take all of these men and create men, like the Mulan song, I'm gonna make a man out of you.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's that's what was playing in my head as you were talking about that whole thing, by the way. But yeah, no, I mean it's phenomenal. And I just from the bottom of my heart and like everyone else, I'm sure I'm speaking for all of them, is like thank you so much for your service and protecting citizens like me, right? And I just that's I don't know if I'd ever be able to have that ability to do something like that. I think that's I would be very limited with being that type of role in society. So thank you for your sacrifices and what you guys do together and for everyone else. I mean, it's just you guys are not appreciated enough. So hopefully I can show you guys that I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Uh-huh.
It's an honor. That's how I look at it. It's an honor for me.
Absolutely.
Well,
Woo!
is there literally anything else that we can talk about, or do you I mean, we'll be here all night if we're not careful.
If we brought up another topic, we would need at least another 3 hours for this. So I
Yikes.
propose doing this again at some point for fun.
Oh, yes.
And talking about life and things like that. But
Right. We gotta stop. We gotta stop,
I know
guys.
we just got to because I mean my butt is actually getting numb and I'm gonna have
I
to get
know.
up and start doing some
Right.
stretches and get some cardio in because
Same.
I can only
Same.
sit for so long. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
Well, let's close this out. Henna, this was awesome, right? I
Seriously.
think I speak for both of us from saying this was probably honestly is my favorite podcast so far of just like talking, right? Like this was
Yeah.
probably the deepest we've really gotten. But I mean, this was just awesome. So is there anything that number one, I've got a couple things for you. Is there anything that you want to say to my followers and anything that you want to express for yourself? And also follow that up with how can people find you? How can people get in touch with you? Give them all of it.
Mhm. Yeah. So I mean, I feel like I talked about a lot of different things. So hopefully from whatever I've shared and I'm telling you, it is the bare minimum of what I've shared. It's so
Right.
much deeper. There's so much more. But again, we're already like 2.5 hours in or two
Yeah.
hours in. So,
Yeah.
there's only so much we can share. But hopefully whatever I have talked about, does connect to someone in some way for your own reasons. And I think this has been one of my favorite conversations to have also. So thank you for having me, and thank
Of
you
course.
for allowing me to talk about my nonsense and being crazy and wild. And thank you for cursing in the beginning, because I didn't know. I
Yes.
should have asked you, like, are we allowed to curse? Because naturally
course.
that's who I
Oh
am.
yeah. Yeah.
So
Not
I'm
much
glad that I
different.
was able to be more of who I am. Yeah, cool. Oh man, see me at the gym, like I'm a savage at that point,
Oh
you know.
yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah. So hopefully, if you guys do find me on social media or anything else and you learn a little bit more about me, please feel free to ask me questions. Send me a message and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And whatever I'm able to give you, I will always give. But you can find me. So Instagram would be Healing with Henna 311. Now 311 because I used to weigh 311 pounds. And then the name of my business is Healing with Henna. Or you could go to my website, healingwithhenna.com. TikTok is also Healing with Henna. And yeah, I'm sure you can find it on Dylan's
Yep.
Instagram story or something like that, and you can
I'll
follow
be-
it through if
I'll
you post it.
for sure be putting it in the description of whatever you're
Oh,
listening to.
yeah. Okay, perfect. Yes.
If it's on YouTube, if it's on Spotify, or I think Apple Podcasts is where I get
Yeah.
most of my views. So,
Okay.
Yeah, guys, this has been awesome. Henna, thank you so much. Kyle, awesome as usual.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Gonna plug a few things. If you want to join my inspirational text platform, get a chance to maybe feature your question on the podcast, go ahead and text your question to 1-608-336-4480. It's also going to be down below. Thank you so much. If you followed all the way through to the whole, I think it was about 2 hours. Thank you for joining us this week on the Dylan Experience. This has been an awesome chat. Join us next week. I have no idea what we're talking about. I think we might be interviewing Clay, which will be awesome. But yeah, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you next week on the Dylan Experience.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.